May 18, 1860, Chicago, Illinois. After 2 days of deliberation and voting, the relatively unheard of Abraham Lincoln wins the Republican nomination for U.S. President. It comes as a complete surprise, as most of the nation assumed former Governor of New York, William H. Seward, would win the ticket. But as America would learn over the next 5 years, Lincoln proved more politically savvy than people gave him credit for. Nevertheless, at the time, many were outraged over his nomination. The South, out of fear that he was going to abolish slavery and grant blacks equal status with whites, and the North, because they believed the Republican Party had a chance to nominate the best man for the job, Seward, the only man who could save them from the looming Civil War, and instead, they chose the rail splitter candidate, that backwoods, uncultured prairie lawyer from Illinois. Little did they know, however, that Lincoln was a rock star. While his Democratic opponent Stephen Douglas campaigned for the election, Lincoln remained in Springfield, Illinois, where he wisely refrained from giving speeches or responding to journalists about his stances on big issues. This in an effort to keep himself from putting his very large, ungainly foot in his mouth, which was easy to do at this time in American history, with much of the country on either side of the aisle looking for any small thing to find fault with and lambast in the media. Lincoln also claimed that nothing had changed in terms of his stance on the major political issues of the day. Everything you could want to know about his beliefs and how he intended to run the country could be found in his previous speeches and writings. But it seems there was one thing Lincoln was willing to have his mind changed over and share publicly: facial hair. Prior to the presidential election, Lincoln was, and had been for years, clean-shaven. It's hard to imagine him this way, as this wizened, whiskered countenance is how we often see him in pictures or on monuments. But he almost never went this route if it weren't for an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell, pictured here in her 20s. About a month before the election, Bedell's father, Norman, a staunch Republican, brought home a campaign poster featuring the images of Lincoln and his vice presidential candidate, Hannibal Hamlin. Looking at it, Grace told her mother he would look better if he wore whiskers, and I mean to write him and tell him so. So, she did, saying, quote, "I have yet got 4 brothers and part of them will vote for you, if you let your whiskers grow. I will try and get the rest of them to vote for you. You would look a great deal better, for your face is so thin. All the ladies like whiskers, and they would tease their husbands to vote for you, and then you would be president." You have to remember women could not vote at this time, so teasing their husbands was about all they could do. But as Grace was wise enough to understand, as most married men understand, myself included, is that the woman's vote in the household probably carried a great deal of influence. Hashtag happy wife, happy life. Lincoln also seemed to recognize the wisdom in her suggestion, even though he initially questioned her logic. As to the whiskers, he wrote in a letter, "Having never worn any, do you not think people would call it a silly affectation if I were to begin it now?" It's not certain how serious he was about this concern, but it must not have been too great, as a month later, he was sporting this rad goatee in a picture taken a few weeks after winning the election. "Dost thou even vape, bro?" A few months later, sporting this now fuller and more recognizable beard, he stopped in Westfield, New York on his way to the White House. There, he told the gathered crowd that a, quote, little correspondent from their city had suggested he grow the whiskers now adorning his face, and wondered if she was amongst them. Sure enough, Grace was, and Lincoln made his way toward her, giving her a kiss and saying, quote, "You see, I let these whiskers grow for you, Grace." Today, there's a statue in Westfield commemorating the moment. What's your favorite bit of Lincoln history? And be sure to check out the new season of Craft Brew Review with our resident beard, Alabama Boss. All episodes are now available on Rated Red's YouTube channel. I'm Christopher Pilning.